The air is thick with the stench of sweat and blood. Torches flicker against pre-dawn darkness, casting long, jittery shadows across a dusty courtyard. In the center of the space stands a man in chains, Apollodorus of Cassandreia, once a tyrant, now a condemned captive. His fine robes are torn and soiled. Sweat beads on his brow despite the cool hour. All around, a circle of onlookers gathers in tense silence. Some are soldiers in gleaming Macedonian armor, sent by King Antigonus to enforce justice. Others are gaunt, hollow-eyed townspeople, the very citizens Apollodorus once terrorized. They clutch their shawls tight, drawn by morbid duty to witness the fate of the man who brought their city to ruin. Overhead, the sky is a deep indigo, stars fading before the dawn, a new day about to break, in more ways than one. Low guttural growls emanate from a pit at the edge of the courtyard. There, behind a wooden gate, starving hounds pace and snarl. Their ribs strain against their mangy hides, their eyes gleam with feral hunger. Apollodorus can't see them yet, but he can hear them, a savage chorus echoing off the stone walls. A tremor of fear passes over his face. Moments ago, he was boasting of his strength, cursing his captors with every vile word he knew. But now, confronted with those primal sounds of fury, the veneer of defiance cracks. He staggers backward, chains clinking, as if he might somehow escape what's coming. The crowd presses in unconsciously. Even those who loathe him feel a chill of dread. No one gathered here, not even Apollodorus's most bitter victims, has ever seen a man thrown to the dogs. A military commander steps forward, torch in one hand and a scroll in the other. In a clear, formal voice, he reads out the crimes: murder, treason, impiety, cruelty beyond measure. Each accusation lands like a blow. Apollodorus's jaw tightens, his once piercing eyes dart desperately over the faces surrounding him. Where are the allies he bought with gold and flattery, the mercenaries who swore to defend him? Nowhere. He is alone, ringed in by hatred and righteous anger. The reading ends. The commander pauses, then pronounces the sentence, death, in a manner befitting his monstrous deeds. At this, two guards seize the wooden gate's bar. With a grunt, they heave it aside. The door flings open, and from the darkness of the pit, 6 shapes slink forward. For an instant, time itself seems to hold its breath. Apollodorus freezes, eyes wide. The crowd leans in. A woman in the front covers her mouth, remembering how this man had her husband executed on a whim. A former city magistrate exhales sharply. Once, Apollodorus had his tongue cut out for questioning a decree. Now they all watch, hearts pounding as the hounds emerge. One by one, the dogs creep into the torchlight, rib-thin mastiffs with matted fur, lips peeled back from yellow fangs. They spread out, heads low, circling the condemned tyrant. Apollodorus trembles visibly. He turns, trying to track all of them, backing away step by step. But there is nowhere to go. The ring of spectators pushes him inward, back toward the beasts. A deep growl rises from the largest hound, a scar-faced brute at the front. Its hackles bristle as it locks eyes with the man before it. Saliva drips from its jowls. Apollodorus opens his mouth, to plead, to pray, but no sound comes. In this fraught moment, with death inches away, his mind reels back to how it all began. Not long ago, this man was the unquestioned master of Cassandreia, a bustling Greek city on the Aegean coast. He was not born to power. He stole it. Years earlier, Apollodorus had walked these very streets as an ordinary citizen, blending in with the crowds. By all accounts, he was unremarkable at first, a middling trader's son, perhaps, or a minor official. But he possessed one extraordinary talent: deception. With a warm smile and comforting words, Apollodorus cultivated an image of himself as a champion of the people. He spoke out against corrupt officials and offered small kindnesses to the poor. In the taverns and marketplaces, he earned a nickname, Good Apollodorus. Few realized that behind the friendly facade lurked vaulting ambition. Late one night, in a hidden warehouse by the docks, Apollodorus revealed his true face. There, under flickering oil lamps, he gathered a band of discontented men, malcontents, debtors, bravos for hire, and swore them to a dark oath. The doors were barred and a sacrifice prepared. On the floor lay a slaughtered dog, its belly slit open. One by one, Apollodorus's new allies stepped forward to smear their hands in the animal's blood, each man vowing loyalty to the cause of making Apollodorus tyrant of Cassandreia. According to whispers, later spread in fear, he made them partake in barbaric rituals to seal their pact, rituals drawn from the darkest corners of Thracian law. No bond was too gruesome so long as it bound them to him. As the first light of dawn crept under the warehouse door, Apollodorus and his conspirators had set their plan in motion. Cassandreia would be theirs. In the months that followed, tragedy struck the city's leadership. One magistrate after another fell to mysterious assassins. A beloved general died suddenly of fever, though many suspected poison. Panic gripped the streets. Some unseen hand was clearing a path to power. All the while, Apollodorus stoked the people's fear, whispering that the old government could not keep them safe. He positioned himself as the only man who could bring order. When at last he and his henchmen made their move, seizing the armory and the city gates in a lightning coup, the frightened populace barely resisted. Cassandreia woke up to a new ruler, one who promised security and peace at the price of absolute obedience. At first, Apollodorus played the benevolent dictator. He lowered grain prices, hosted lavish games, and paid public honors to the gods to win favor. Many citizens, exhausted by chaos, accepted his reign almost gratefully. But those closest to the coup knew a different Apollodorus, ruthless, suspicious, and hungry for total control. Early on, a rumor reached the new tyrant's ear that some judges in the city court had nearly convicted him for conspiracy before his rise. Apollodorus remembered how narrowly he escaped legal punishment in the old days. At his last trial, he had evaded a guilty verdict by dramatically dressing in tattered black clothes, weeping and professing his innocence. The ruse had fooled the judges and bought him time. Now, ironically secure in the power he once denied coveting, Apollodorus set out to punish those same magistrates who had shown him mercy. One quiet evening, as dusk settled, Apollodorus's guards dragged those judges from their homes. The men who had once spared Apollodorus's life were hauled in front of the new tyrant's throne, accused of treason against the people. Apollodorus himself read out their sentence, his voice dripping with a cruel satisfaction. Their mercy meant nothing to him now. In fact, he saw their past leniency as an insult, as if they had underestimated his resolve. Before a small gathering of his most loyal henchmen, Apollodorus carried out his first bloody reprisal. The judge's execution was slow and public, meant to send a message. It said he ordered each one tortured, tongues cut out, eyes blinded, before finally granting death's release. Apollodorus watched without a flicker of pity. When it was done, he stepped over their broken bodies and remarked coldly that mercy is for the weak. The men and women witnessing this shuddered, coming away with one truth seared in their hearts. Cassandreia was now firmly in the grip of a monster. The mask had fully dropped. From that moment, Apollodorus ruled by fear and iron. His reign of terror unfolded in full. Every day, new decrees expanded his powers. He seized property from wealthy families, declaring it for the public good, while lining his own coffers. City watchmen patrolled the streets with Gaulish mercenaries, towering tattooed warriors from beyond the northern mountains, whom Apollodorus had hired as personal enforcers. These foreigners spoke no Greek, but their drawn swords and savage grins translated Apollodorus's will clearly enough. Dissent became a death sentence, a careless word against the tyrant, a doubtful shake of the head. Informers lurked everywhere, eager to report any hint of disloyalty. Those accused would be dragged off at night, never to be seen again. Mothers would wake to find sons vanished. Husbands would return home to discover their wives had been taken by Apollodorus's agents as collateral for some imagined slight. Cassandreia, once a prosperous and cultured city, was twisted into a nightmare. One account describes heads of executed traitors tarred and mounted on the city gates at dawn, a grisly warning to all who entered. The temples were not spared either. Apollodorus plundered the treasury of Athena and desecrated altars to pay his mercenaries and fund his indulgences. At night, the palace on the hill blazed with torchlight and echoed with drunken laughter as Apollodorus indulged in endless feasts and debauchery. He gorged himself on rich meats and wine while common folk starved outside under curfew. It is said no pleasure was forbidden to him: wine, women, cruelty, and he pursued all with depraved abandon. In dank prison cells beneath the city, his victims, political rivals, outspoken citizens, or simply unlucky souls, languished and screamed under torture, their agonies a dark counterpoint to the tyrant's revelry above. Yet even as Apollodorus inflicted horror on others, his own fears deepened. The tyrant trusted no one. He rotated his personal guards constantly, fearing plots. He had taster slaves sample every dish and cup for poison. Each sunset, he moved to a different bedchamber, sometimes sleeping in secret cellars, terrified that assassins might come in the dark. Some nights, he was haunted by nightmares, blood-soaked visions of the very atrocities he'd committed. Those near him would later recall that Apollodorus sometimes spoke to unseen phantoms or woke up shouting, eyes wild. If anything, these fears only made him more dangerous. By dawn, he would steel himself again, doubling down on cruelty as if to prove he was the one to be feared, not the other way around. Paranoia and power fed each other in a vicious cycle. Soon, word of Cassandreia's misery spread far beyond its walls. Traders and refugees carried tales of Apollodorus's atrocities to every port in the Aegean. Other Greek cities shuddered at the reports. Here was a tyranny to rival the worst of legend. Apollodorus's name was cursed in the same breath as ancient despots like Phalaris of Acragas or the Dionysius of Syracuse. Even hardened statesmen in distant lands were shocked by rumors of his sadistic caprice. And in the palaces of Macedonia, the rightful king, Antigonus II Gonatas, newly secure on his throne, heard these rumors with mounting anger and alarm. Cassandreia was a key city in his realm, and it had fallen to a madman. Antigonus knew that allowing Apollodorus's bloody regime to continue was both a moral stain and a political threat. A tyrant like that could inspire unrest elsewhere or ally with Macedon's enemies. It had to end. One spring, Antigonus mustered an army and marched on Cassandreia. His banners fluttered bright with the royal emblem as phalanxes of seasoned soldiers encircled the city that Apollodorus had turned into his fortress. Inside the walls, panic ignited. Many citizens secretly rejoiced at the prospect of liberation, but Apollodorus's Gaulish mercenaries and loyalists prepared for a siege. The tyrant raved, swearing he would never surrender. Cassandreia's walls were strong, her granaries stocked, for Apollodorus had hoarded food for himself, even as others starved. Antigonus's first assault was rebuffed with heavy losses. Apollodorus's archers and war machines hurled stones and fire, painting the battlements with enemy blood. The siege dragged on for weeks, then months. Summer heat brought stench and disease to the camps outside. Inside the city, hunger began to gnaw at the ordinary folk, though Apollodorus and his mercenaries still ate well from hidden stores. The people's hope flickered as the stalemate stretched. Would this tyrant actually outlast the king? But Antigonus was determined. Seeing that brute force alone might fail against Apollodorus's ruthless defenses, the king turned to cunning. He dispatched a messenger under flag of truce to parley with the tyrant. To everyone's surprise, Apollodorus agreed to talks, likely stalling for time or searching for an advantage. Enter Amanius, a notorious pirate captain from the Aegean, known as much for his silver tongue as for his cutlass. Antigonus secretly brokered a deal with this pirate, promising him rich rewards if he could end the stalemate. Amanius sailed one night into the harbor of Cassandreia under cover of darkness, flying what looked like Apollodorus's own colors. The guards, thinking him an ally or a smuggler bringing much-needed supplies, let his ships dock. By dawn, Amanius had ingratiated himself with Apollodorus, pretending to switch sides. He flattered the tyrant, lamenting how Antigonus's siege was bad for business and swearing that he hated the king. Apollodorus, arrogant and increasingly desperate for outside help, believed the pirate's lies. Over cups of wine in the battered palace, Amanius proposed a bold plan. He would feign a reconciliation effort with King Antigonus, lulling the besiegers, and meanwhile ferry in reinforcements for Apollodorus. Perhaps greedy for any chance of survival, Apollodorus embraced the scheme. He even sent Amanius back to Antigonus's camp with gifts as a sign of good faith to begin negotiating peace. Everything was unfolding as Apollodorus wished, or so he thought. The final betrayal came swiftly. On a moonless night, Amanius led a hand-picked band of Antigonus's soldiers through a secret sally port in the city's defenses, a quiet gate that Apollodorus himself had shown him, trusting the pirate to move unseen. Amanius had memorized the guard rotations from Apollodorus's own boasts. Now he took full advantage. The sentries, perhaps drunk on the wine Apollodorus provided, were dispatched with muffled, throat-slitting precision. Before any alarm could be raised, hundreds of royal troops poured through the open gate into the sleeping city. What followed was chaos, the night filled with shouts and the clash of steel. Apollodorus's mercenaries stumbled from their barracks, startled awake, only to be cut down in the dark by Antigonus's advancing phalanx. Streets that had been ghostly and silent for months now rang with battle. Civilians cowered in their homes as squads of king's men stormed toward the city center. In the confusion, some of Cassandreia's citizens, emboldened by hope, rose up to help the attackers. They pointed out hidden traps or stashes of Apollodorus's fighters, eager to be rid of their tyrant. Realizing too late that he'd been deceived, Apollodorus fell into a blind panic. He gathered a handful of loyal bodyguards and fled into the twisting corridors of his palace. Perhaps he sought refuge in the temple of Zeus nearby, hoping the sanctity might spare him, or perhaps he tried to hide among the very prisoners he had tortured, thinking Antigonus's men would never look there. The truth is lost in the fog of that frantic night. What is known is that as dawn broke over a city free from tyranny, Apollodorus was caught attempting to slip out through a side gate leading to the countryside. A group of Cassandrian locals and a pair of Antigonus's officers cornered him in an alleyway. Gone was the imperious ruler in purple robes. Apollodorus was disheveled, streaked with dust and blood. He wielded a sword, hands shaking from either rage or terror. There, in the early gray light, a brief, vicious skirmish took place. Apollodorus, for all his cruelty, was no coward in fight. He lunged and slashed like a man possessed, reportedly wounding 2 men who tried to seize him, but numbers and exhaustion caught up to him. A heavy blow from a spear butt cracked against his temple, and the tyrant crumpled to the ground, unconscious. By midday, Cassandreia was liberated. The city's gates were thrown open to Antigonus's full army, and with them came a flood of citizens released from fear. People embraced in the streets, weeping with relief and joy. But as word spread that Apollodorus had been captured alive, a different mood mingled with the celebration, a deep, long-suppressed thirst for retribution. Too many had suffered unspeakably under Apollodorus's hand. In the central square, a crowd began to gather and grow restless, calling for the tyrant to face the people's justice. Antigonus, though a king and conqueror, understood the sentiment. Apollodorus's crimes were heinous. Executing him would serve as a warning to any who might emulate his cruelty. And so, judgment was arranged for the following dawn. Back in the blood-stained courtyard, dawn is now breaking in earnest. Pale sunlight creeps over the walls, painting the scene in stark clarity. Apollodorus stands trembling as the first of the starved hounds edges closer, growling. The soldiers of Antigonus hold the crowd in check, though a murmur of anticipation ripples through the citizens. Some wear grim, vindictive smiles. Others look pale, horrified at what is about to happen, but unwilling to turn away. Justice must be seen today, however savage, to close this awful chapter. Apollodorus's throat works convulsively. Finally, in a cracked voice, he begins to plead. "Mercy," he croaks, directing his gaze wildly at the commander, at the crowd, at anyone. "Have mercy on me. I can pay. I will go into exile. Spare me, I beg you." The man who showed mercy to none is now begging for it with tears in his eyes. But no mercy comes. A few bitter laughs break out from the onlookers. A woman's voice shouts back, clear and cold. "Did you show mercy to my children, Apollodorus?" He cannot pinpoint who said it. The voices around him meld into a grim silence once more. The commander simply raises his arm, and the handlers let slip the leashes. With a collective snarl, the dogs attack. The largest hound lunges and clamps its jaws onto Apollodorus's arm, driving him to one knee. Another streaks in from the side, seizing the flesh of his calf. Apollodorus screams, a high, piercing sound that cuts through the morning air, and instinctively tries to wrench free, but the dogs are too powerful and too hungry. They drag him down. In seconds, more hounds pile on, a frenzy of fur and fangs. Apollodorus disappears under the pack as they tear at him mercilessly. Gasps and cries erupt from the crowd. Even hardened soldiers flinch at the ferocity of the mauling. Apollodorus's arm comes free of one dog's grip only for another to seize his shoulder, teeth sinking deep. Blood sprays across the dusty ground, and the tyrant's once proud voice dissolves into wet, gurgling shrieks of agony. He fights with desperate strength, struggling to pry the animals off, but it's like battling a whirlwind of knives. One hound worries at his belly. Another locks onto his throat briefly, shaking before a third knocks it aside to get its own share. Bones crack audibly. The sound is stomach-turning, a visceral crunch that echoes off the silent walls. Apollodorus's legs kick and spasm in the red dust. A few spectators turn away, unable to watch, but many hold their gaze, faces set in hard satisfaction. This is poetic justice in their eyes. Every atrocity he committed is being repaid in kind. "This is for my brother, Butcher," someone hisses through tears, clutching a locket of a loved one. Others simply stare, transfixed, as the tyrant's life is literally devoured before them. Apollodorus's screams weaken into a piteous, inhuman wail. He's no longer fighting back. The shock and blood loss are overwhelming. In his final moments, perhaps he sees the dawn light overhead, the outline of free citizens standing tall, and realizes that all his power was for naught. Injustice, cruelty, betrayal, the very evils he dealt to others, have come home to roost with a vengeance. At last, the awful screams fall silent. Apollodorus of Cassandreia lies still, a torn and bloodied rag of a man, his reign and life violently extinguished. The dogs, their purpose grimly served, are whipped back by the handlers before they consume the remains entirely. An eerie hush falls. The crowd, even those who yearned for this, grapple with the horror of what they've witnessed. Some are crying openly, a release of long pent-up anguish. Others nod solemnly. Justice has been done, however savage. As the sun fully climbs over the horizon, a new day dawns in Cassandreia. The nightmare tyrant is gone. In the days and years to follow, Apollodorus's name will become a byword for cruelty, spoken with a shudder. Parents will tell misbehaving children tales of the evil ruler and his gruesome end, as a warning of how wickedness is ultimately punished. Yet this morning, standing in the first light of freedom, the people of Cassandreia also understand a deeper truth. Violence, even when just, leaves scars on all who behold it. They have witnessed cruelty answered with cruelty. A necessary act, perhaps, but a frightful one nonetheless. For Antigonus, and for all of Greece, Apollodorus's fate serves as a stark lesson. Tyranny may thrive for a time, inflicting untold pain, but it carries the seeds of its own destruction. Those who rule by terror will often die by terror. In Apollodorus's final moments, the world saw not a mighty lord, but a frightened man being torn apart by forces he could not control, much as he had torn apart the lives of others. It is a tale of injustice begetting injustice, of how absolute power corrupts absolutely, and how the pursuit of power through cruelty can lead to a ruinous downfall. Though Apollodorus's screams have long faded, and his story is but a faded footnote in ancient chronicles, the moral remains vivid. Evil deeds seldom go unpunished, and the retribution, when it comes, can be as horrific as the crimes that preceded it. The forgotten fate of Apollodorus of Cassandreia stands as one of history's most chilling reckonings, a dark chapter that warns even today of the price of unchecked cruelty and tyranny. As the camera of our mind's eye pulls away from that blood-soaked courtyard and the sun rises higher, we're left to ponder the heavy themes of this saga. The fragility of justice, the seduction and corruption of power, and the raw human cost of revenge. These ancient echoes urge us to remain vigilant against tyranny in any age, and to remember that even the mightiest oppressors can fall in the end. Thank you for witnessing this journey into one of history's darkest corners. If this story gripped you or provoked your thoughts, please consider supporting this channel. Leave a comment with your reflections. Hit the like button to share this important lesson with others, and subscribe for more dramatic true stories from the past. Together, by learning these lessons of history, we ensure that the atrocities of yesterday are neither forgotten nor repeated. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, the truth of history can be stranger and darker than fiction.